The Mountaineers are going dancing. West Virginia earned a bid in the NCAA Tournament for the first time since 2021, and they are headed to Birmingham, Alabama. We get into that and much more on this edition of the Blue Gold Sports Podcast. What's going on, everybody? Wesley Shoemaker, Aaron Parker, back with you today. It is a happy podcast. Mountaineers are in the NCAA Tournament. If you had told me this after an 0-5 start, after it seemed like this season was going up and down, sideways, taking all these different turns, I might not have believed you. Here we are, Mountaineer women. They also got in big time for them. Coach P's first season. But Aaron, just your initial thoughts on the Mountaineers. They were like the fourth name read on Sunday, which I think was good in itself that you just got it out the way. Bad news is they're in Alabama's region. Other bad news to that is if they beat Maryland, they're playing Alabama, well, in the state of Alabama. So kind of just your general thoughts on them playing Maryland and where they were seated.
Yeah, very proud of this team. They finished the season strong, got the job done at home, got the job done on the first day in Kansas City, won 3 of their last 4, and put themselves into the tournament. So good for them. Obviously, if you're a Mountaineer fan, you want to be in Columbus. That's more ideal. I think we talked about that in the last episode. But Birmingham, that's just the cards that they were dealt. Got to go down and take care of business against Maryland, and then at that point, then you worry about Bama. But Maryland's a good team; you can't overlook them. But if they do get past the Terps, then that's going to be tough to play Bama in their backyard.
Yeah, certainly no easy draw by any stretch of the imagination. But it's fun because you're the 8-9 matchup, so it's kind of two similarly talent level teams. You are playing the first overall game, so you're on CBS. Like, all eyes are going to be on you. You get for those watching on TV, you're going to get Jim Nantz in his last March Madness run. Like, you're going to get that. You're going to get all the Huggins Hall of Fame stories because they're going to promote that. They're going to do that. And I would expect there will be a Mountaineer contingent down there in Birmingham, and you get somewhat of a rivalry that was built by football in a sense that is now translated onto the basketball court. Obviously, we know in 2015, these two teams played also in the NCAA tournament. And if you're a Maryland fan, you did not like that game. And if you're a West Virginia fan, well, you saw West Virginia beat Mello Trimble up. So let's talk about the Terps. Terps, 21-12 overall. They were kind of bounced around the top to the middle of the Big Ten pack all year. Few interesting nuggets on the Terps. They are 31st in the net, 22nd ranked by Ken Palm. But biggest thing, just for like West Virginia, is Maryland has struggled away from Xfinity Center. They only have one loss all year at home. That was in the non-conference to UCLA where they just got killed. Other than that, they have been perfect at home. They are 2-9 on the road, 3-2 on a neutral court, and I believe those 2 wins on the road are against the 2 worst teams in the Big 12, in the Big 10, and I think it was Nebraska and Minnesota. I know Minnesota for one. I'm not sure. I think I'm right on Nebraska. But anyways, the Terps have struggled to play away from home. West Virginia has also struggled to play away from home, obviously, but they kind of righted that ship in a sense. At the end of the year, playing in that high, crazy environment with the amount of adversity that they did against Iowa State and winning that game, that's huge. And so we'll see which team really can get it done away from their home court is what I think it's going to be down there in Birmingham on Thursday.
Yeah, it's a test for both squads for sure. I mean, if you look at this WVU program since the Deuce McBride and Derek Culver days, winning on the road, winning anywhere outside of the WVU Coliseum is a struggle. But this team did it in Lubbock, and they did it late in the season against a tournament team in Iowa State. And then they went down to Kansas City and got it done on a neutral floor. So I think this team has improved compared to last year's team away from the Coliseum. And, obviously Maryland has struggled too. So to put 2 teams in Alabama, I think it's going to be a good clash, and we'll see. Somebody's got to adjust and something's got to give.
Yeah, somebody's going to win the game. It's just a matter of who. Let's get into a little stats. Maryland is a defensive-oriented team. As you're going to hear later in an interview I have with Henry Brown of WMUC Sports at the University of Maryland, he says they like to press. They kind of do a lot of different defenses. They shuffle defenses. They move things around in that sense. And they slow the game down. Maryland is 312th ranked in Ken Palm and adjusted tempo per game. West Virginia, on the flip side, 104th. So Maryland really likes to make you use the clock and, in a sense, can be better on defense because they're not giving you the ball as much on offense. So just how you think this team will match up against the press, Aaron? I think you obviously have Keedy, who's not a true point guard, which could be a downside, but you have multiple guys who can dribble the ball. Emmett Matthews, Trey Mitchell, those types of guys other than your guards.
You can. I mean, you do have different options there bringing the ball up the floor, but I mean, it usually does fall into the hands most of the time with Kedrian Johnson, and then when he's on the bench, Joe Toussaint. That kind of scares me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I don't think the Mountaineers have seen a ton of waves of press defenses, pressure defenses. And, looking back at that Kansas game in Lawrence when it was really the DeJuan Harris show on defense, it kind of reminded me of Javon Carter and Press Virginia. And the Mountaineers turned the ball over 21 times. Keedy turned it over 8 himself. So it scares me a little bit, but you do have a lot of experience there. Trey Mitchell is a senior. Emmett Matthews is a fifth year. Keedy's a fifth year. Eric's a fifth year. So you do have experience, but I don't know. It does scare me a little bit with a pressure defense because I don't think the Mountaineers have seen it too much.
And also what scares me too is that none of these guys really have NCAA tournament experience. Eric Stevenson, first time in the tournament. Emmett Matthews, he played in the tournament, but it was a few years ago. Keedy, when this team was in the tournament, he didn't see the floor much. So Trey Mitchell, I don't think he wasn't on that Texas team last year when they went to the tournament. He was off the team by then. So there's not a lot of guys who have been here on this stage before, and two things will happen. They'll either rise to the occasion or they won't, and we'll find out.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you got a lot of years experience there, but like you said, there's just not much NCAA tournament experience. And when these guys were starting college or maybe in their sophomore season, when you go back to Eric and Emmett, the COVID kind of took the tournament away from Emmett. I know that. I'm not sure what Eric's position was with Wichita State, but I'm sure he had some opportunities taken away as well. And like you said, Kedrian Johnson was kind of like a third option on that 20-21 team, and Emmett was a starter, but really only won one game there. So somebody's going to have to rise to the occasion, and I think WVU's big men. I mean, they're pretty inexperienced when it comes to NCAA tournament play. Nothing for Trey Mitchell and nothing for Jimmy Bell. So we'll see how that works.
Yeah, speaking of Maryland's big man, Julian Reese. He is a talented player who's really, really, really athletic. On the season, he's kind of gone up and down, I would say. He's scoring 11.2 points per game, just over 7 rebounds per game, has 38 blocks on the year. So as you'll hear later, he struggles getting into foul trouble, but as we know with West Virginia, they've gone small recently, and this could mean you have a 6'7" guy at your 5, either Emmett or Trey. Trey closer to 6'8", I'd say, but either way, you get the point. And so West Virginia is going to have to find a way to kind of exploit these mini matchups, I'd say. And I think that when you're going small against a pressing team, that kind of helps, because if you have Emmett and Trey on the floor, you really do have 5 guys that can dribble and handle the ball in some capacity. You don't want them bringing the ball up the court, obviously, but you can throw it to them. You can dribble, like they can dribble the ball, and you are not terrified of them with the ball, like say James Okonkwo or Jimmy Bell. So there's that side to it as well, that if you're playing a pressing team and you have 5 guys on the floor when you're playing smaller that can dribble, it helps you. But I just don't know how this team's going to do, because we've seen them, they're at their best when they're running up and down, getting in transition, going quick. Maryland likes to kind of slow things down, play their type of game. It's going to be a who adjusts to who first. And if you're West Virginia and you have to speed Maryland up and you get going by their press, it's going to be a good day for you, I think.
Right, and the Mountaineers have succeeded down this last stretch when going small, and I'd imagine that Joe Toussaint will be a pretty big factor. He had 19 against Iowa State. In that matchup, we kind of saw the Mountaineers just really go small, especially the second half, and especially the under 4 timeout up until the end of the game, and I think it worked for them. And I think it worked against Kansas State as well. I think if you're a Mountaineer fan, you might see a little bit of Kobe Johnson too, if in a kind of a backup role, he can take care of the ball. I'd be interested to see if he takes any shots, or Seth Wilson gets in the game. If you want to try to speed up that Terp defense, as opposed to trying to go big with them and trying to sub James in and keep Jimmy in and play that kind of game. So if the Mountaineers go small and then try to run them, I think those 3 backup guards will get some run.
Yeah, I think Kobe should see the floor. He's seen the floor a lot recently. I think Seth, big time. Like if you have a guy who you can get the ball to and to break a press by making shots, that's perfect. Eric, he's gonna have to play. He's gonna have to be Eric. He's not gonna have. He can't shy away from the moment. Like we talked about this on our last episode of that. Eric's been dying for this moment. He's the guy. He's the showman. Like come take it. It's there for you. It's here. It's March. Kind of want to get your thoughts on this. I've been thinking about it this way. If you're West Virginia, that I don't want to say that they can make a run and say that definitively, because obviously we've seen this team just not show up at times this year. But I don't want to say the door is closed to make a run, and here's why. West Virginia, they've played Purdue, they've played Kansas, they've played Texas, they've played all these. They played Xavier on the road, like they've played all these top schools, and they've never been against an opponent that they have not had a chance to beat, and that is a positive. Against Purdue in Oregon on Thanksgiving night, you were down 4 with like 4 to play. Ended up losing by, I think, 12, but it doesn't matter. Kansas, 2 weeks ago on the road, lose by 2. Xavier, you lead for 32, 34 minutes of that game for the most part. Should have a chance to win and then just can't get it done. So my point being here is that the seed line here doesn't matter. You play the game for a reason. Anyone can beat anyone. And West Virginia should have some level of confidence that they're finally outside of the Big 12. They're seeing a non-Big 12 opponent, and they're going to have a chance to send messages because they've competed with the top teams in the country already. I get Alabama's really good. I get Maryland's a good team. I get, if you look at the bracket, San Diego State, Virginia, Baylor, all these teams, Arizona, all these teams in your side of your region, are good. But I'm just not saying that it's one win and done as your ceiling. I'm saying this team's ceiling is Sweet 16 Elite 8 territory because they've shown they can compete. It's just a matter of if they can compete and win. Those 2 very different things.
Yeah, you're right. They have shown that they've been able to compete. They stayed in that game against Xavier. I mean, they had that game within
Probably
grasp.
should have won that game.
Yeah, probably should have won that game. Let it slip. Almost beat Purdue. Emmett Matthews was sick. People were in foul trouble. Eric, Jimmy, they were in foul trouble.
Trey Mitchell only had 3 points or something like that in the game. He had 3 fouls before he had a point.
Absolutely. You're right there against Kansas. You beat the brakes off of a non-conference opponent in Florida. But I think if you're the Mountaineers, they've kind of seen, starting Big 12 play 0-5, they were right there at home against Baylor. Right there against,
Texas.
I think Texas, lost by 5 to Texas.
Should have beat Kansas State on the road. Probably should have beat Oklahoma State on the road. So those are 4 or 5 wins there that you could have had.
Yeah, absolutely. And then as the season went on, towards the end of the season, you saw the Mountaineers kind of get over that hump and be right there with teams, but close the door. Auburn at home. Obviously beat the brakes off Oklahoma. Iowa State at home. Just winning these close games, Iowa State on the road. But once you go into NCAA play, you're as good, if not better, than these teams. Nothing against Maryland. And I know WVU can run with Alabama if they got matched up with them, because Alabama beat the brakes off of Oklahoma beat Alabama to death. So if you're the Mountaineers, you kind of just got to knock on they've been knocking on the door all season, kind of just got to bust it open at this point.
Yeah, and I think if you get past, let's say, Maryland, and then you're playing in a road environment with house money against a 1 seed, you have nothing to lose at that point. You honestly have nothing to lose in any of these games because you're in the tournament. It's a big turnaround from a year ago, but go out and play loose. You got 3 seniors who will never play basketball again if you lose. They will never step foot on a college court again once they lose their next game. So those three starters who in their last 2 wins against Texas Tech and Kansas State, they were the story. They carried this team offensively. So those 3 guys, they've got to show up. They wanted this the whole season. Well, now they have it. Are they better than a 9 seed? Yes, but are they also, in a sense, worse than a 9 seed because they're 4 games under 500 in conference play? Also, yes. So you are where you are. Can't change that. Got to go out and play the game.
Exactly. Your starters gotta come ready to play, and the seniors, have to be ready to shine, even though maybe they haven't seen this NCAA moment as much as like when we were in middle school and high school. The seniors on WVU's program, they had already smelled and tasted the NCAA tournament multiple times, and so this is a little different scenario. But if you look back to that Kansas State team, the Kansas State game in Morgantown, 4 of the 5 WVU stars had double figures, 3 of them with 20 plus. They're playing good right now. None of them are on a real cold streak, if you will. I think they're all shooting the ball pretty well. They just got to take care of the basketball and not let the lights get too bright on them.
Yeah, Emma Matthews really has stepped it up in the last 2-3 weeks. Eric Stevenson obviously closed the regular season 5 games scoring 20 plus points. And then Trey Mitchell, he's shown his ceiling is really, really high. And you just have to love that. So for me, that's what I'm going to be looking for. How do your seniors carry this team? Because at the end of the day, those guys are going to be the ones you look to. Eric Stevenson's going to be the one all eyes turn to if you're West Virginia and you need a bucket late against Maryland.
Exactly, and especially if WVU goes on some kind of scoring drought, you're gonna need Trey or especially Eric to step up and kind of, if they have to stop the bleeding, make a shot. You can't let a bad couple of minutes turn into a bad 5 minutes or a bad 7 or 8 minutes, especially in the second half. We've seen that happen. Saw it happen at Xavier. Had that game and they didn't score hardly any field goals in the last 6 or 8 minutes. So you can't let that happen, and your seniors got to make a shot, even if Alabama or Maryland is putting a run on you in the second half, and you got to step up and you got to lead.
Predictions. I'll go first here. We'll go 2 things. We'll go, how far do we think West Virginia can make it? And then we'll go a separate prediction for this Maryland game. I think West Virginia can make it to the Sweet 16. I think they can make it to the Elite 8 if they get the right matchup there. But I think they're capable of beating Maryland. I think they're capable of beating Alabama. It's just whether or not they will do it. Personally, I think Maryland is not the best matchup in the world for West Virginia, just the way their roles are kind of and their styles are kind of flipped. Also, part of me wants to do the reverse psychology thing of go with Maryland just because it feels like that gives West Virginia the best chance to win. But I will take the Mountaineers here. I just think that West Virginia's a good team, and they played in the toughest conference in America, and now they get to go show how good they really are. I think Eric Stevenson, big day. I think Trey Mitchell, you're going to have to be great, especially on defense. Garden Maryland's kind of odd sizing lineup. So I will take West Virginia. I will take them no more than by 4 points. I think this is going to be a back and forth game. Who wins it late? And I think it's going to have to be West Virginia making shots and not relying on getting to the free throw line, because Maryland will not foul you like other teams in the Big 12 have. So that's my prediction. I think ceiling, Sweet 16, Elite 8, maybe, probably Sweet 16. And I'll take West Virginia in the first round win over the Terps.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I mean, when this team's making shots, it's hard to not be able to, in a March Madness setting, say, why not? Why can't they go to the Elite 8 or the Final Four? But as far as ceiling goes, I'm probably going to keep them at the Sweet 16 level. To beat Maryland and Alabama's backyard would be really tough. And assuming there's no upsets on the other side, you would get matched up with Virginia. Virginia's
State,
a really
maybe.
good team. What's up?
San Diego State, maybe.
Yeah.
Both teams who play really good defense. Yep.
Yeah, it's a 5 seed San Diego State and a Virginia team with Tony Bennett's pack line defense. So I don't see them even as a ceiling going like Final Four. But I do see them beating Maryland. I don't know why. Just got a feeling in me that Eric Stevenson's gonna keep up his hot shooting and score 20 plus. As far as Bama goes, if you were to get there, it would have to be like almost like a 2007 to 2008 Duke game or a 2010 Kentucky. It's got to be an upset. WVU's got to be on their game while Bama's got to be struggling, and that can happen. It's March, and that happens every single year. But everything would have to go right.
Yeah, to beat Alabama, you almost have to play perfect game where you turn the ball over less than 7 times, you shoot lights out from 3, you have Jimmy Bell in the game. Like, everything almost has to go right if you're going to beat an Alabama caliber team. And I mean, heck, like, they almost beat Kansas on the road. So there is a blueprint. Like, Kansas and Alabama, they were the neck and neck for who's going to be the overall 1 seed. Alabama got it, but like, here you are. Let's go do this thing. So information on the game, 12:15 tip, Thursday, CBS, Maryland, West Virginia. And that's all I got. Anything else from you?
Yeah, it's an exciting time. It's been since our freshman year since the Mountaineers made the tournament, and that was a COVID tournament with basically no fans. So it's exciting times, very senior heavy team. So hopefully they can get it done down there.
Yeah, for those of you who might not have picked up, Aaron and I are juniors at WVU, so freshman year 2 years ago. Really the first tournament where I feel like I'm like a little anxious for since probably JC's senior year. I mean, obviously that's only the second tournament ago, but there's a good feeling around. I feel a good vibe about this, the way this team can play, and hopefully they bring it down. Hopefully the rest helps. I think it will. I think if you can get Keedy healed up, especially, I think he was probably your most banged up player outside of Mel McGee, who is probably done for the year. So, if you made it this far, we do appreciate you listening. Now I'm going to kick it to my interview with Henry Brown. Once again, I'm Wesley Shoemaker, joined by Aaron Parker, and this is the Blue Gold Sports Podcast. What's up, everybody? I am pleased to be joined by my good friend and writer for WMUC Sports and the University of Maryland, Henry Brown. Henry, how you doing today?
I'm great. Happy to be here.
So Henry's going to just kind of fill us in on who the Terps are. He's a beat writer for the Maryland basketball team and knows all things Maryland basketball. So just going to kind of pick his brain and have a general idea of who the Terps are heading into West Virginia's 8-9 matchup in the first round down in Birmingham. So Henry, just an overall talk about Maryland's season. I know they went 21-12, bounced around the top to middle of the Big Ten, and then lost in, I believe, the Big Ten quarterfinals. So just like, who is Maryland generally as a team?
Well, this is Kevin Willard's first year as coach of Maryland, and he's the first Maryland coach to ever make the tournament in his first year with the program. So, like, he's like one of the stars of the show as college basketball goes. This is Jahmir Young's team. He had a really good case to be first team All Big Ten. He didn't make it, but a few other guards did. There were like 7 guys on the first team. He wasn't one of them. It was sort of a scandal around here, as you could probably guess. But it's his team. He leads the team in scoring by a good amount. He scores about 16 a game. Like 3 guys score 11 a game. He is probably the best point guard, the second best point guard in the Big Ten besides Jalen Pickett. And I think it's going to be a good game, Maryland, West Virginia, because I've been looking at West Virginia's stats, looking at what they're good at, what they're bad at. I think it'd be a really fun matchup.
Talking about Jahmir Young, he's your best player. He's from Charlotte, I believe.
Yes, he is.
Comes to Maryland. He's from the DMV area originally, right? So just kind of, what does he do well? What does he kind of struggle at? And how is he kind of taken Maryland as his team this year?
Okay, yeah. So at Charlotte, he averaged like these monster numbers because it's like Conference USA, I think. It's not one of like the bigger conferences. He averaged like 20 a game, 20 a season. 20 a game one season. Yeah, that's right. And this season he's brought over a lot of the same stuff. He's one of the best finishers around. He's this little guy. He's like 6'1". But he can get into the paint at will. If you put one guy in front of him, he's going to get through the guy. But if you put a bunch of guys in the paint, long guys who can put their arms up, then his shot gets blocked a lot. But he has a really good 2-man game with the big man, Julian Reese. And he's really good at getting everyone else involved, because sometimes one problem with Maryland's offense is it reverts to a lot of staring and looking at him sometimes. He's the only like elite creator on the team. And I believe he had like a 35% usage rate this season, something in that neighborhood.
Talking about your difference between offense and defense here, Maryland, it seems like, likes to switch a lot of different defensive types, whether it be a kind of 3/4 court press, full court press, half court press, sometimes switching into a little bit of a zone. So what have they found that is kind of their calling card on defense? Is it that kind of switching defense, or do they have something they kind of prefer to go to more often than others?
It's the press. It's the 3/4 full court press. I think that when they do that, they can slow the game down to like the second slowest per possession. 1 through about 7 or 8. Maryland plays 7 guys per big game, sometimes 8, depending on their point guard situation. Every single one of them, except for Jahmir Young, is a very good defender at least. Jahmir Young is an okay defender, but that's just like a different tier. Everyone else that they have is highly capable and highly switchable, and they are very good at playing at their own pace. Defense turns to offense, and their defense usually leads the way. Like, a lot of the reasons why they lose these games are because their offense just can't capitalize on the situations the defense creates for them.
Yeah, I was looking at some numbers, and Maryland is one of the slower moving teams per possession in college basketball. They like to hold the ball a lot, and they like to use shot clock on both ends of the floor, and they keep scores down. So on that note, West Virginia they've had a season that's been up and down. They are obviously in the Big 12, started 0-5 in conference play, fought back a little bit. They've competed with everyone. They competed with Purdue. Maryland beat Purdue. What did Maryland do well to control Zach Edey, and who do you think is kind of a difference maker that can translate from a common opponent like Purdue?
The reason why I believe on the road they lost by 3 to Purdue, and then when we hosted Purdue, we beat them by double digits, which was like the biggest deficit they'd had all season by like a lot. It's because of Julian Reese. He's our sophomore big. He's only like 6'9", but he's very smart defensively. And he did a very good job of baiting Zach Edey where he wanted to go. He kept him about as uninvolved as you can ask for. Edey still got his, like he had like 18 points on decent efficiency, but you had him taking fewer shots and you had him fouling more. So Maryland is good at feeding the big man when they need to, and making sure that Julian Reese can get his own shots against Edey, expose him defensively sometimes.
Yeah, talk about guys who seem to have come on late. One of those guys seems to me to be Hakeem Hart, seems to be scoring the ball a lot better in the last month compared to earlier in the season. Is that something you've kind of seen, and what's his game like?
So to me, his scoring has been consistent. It's his playmaking that's taking a jump. He has discovered this role for him where he can be the secondary playmaker when Jahmir Young needs a rest, or at least Maryland needs a more dynamic offense. He is very good. He's a bigger athlete than Jahmir Young. He's 6'6" and a much better defender. He's probably our best one-on-one defender. He's very good at finding cutters. He can handle. He can get to the rim on his own. He's sort of struggled the last few games. He and Dante Scott both, but Scott has been, I don't want to say the streakiest player in the world, but he's probably on that list somewhere. Maryland can be dynamic when they need to, because they realize that when they're too reliant on Jahmir Young, then they're too predictable.
Would you say Jahmir Young's more of a driver, like you would say, or would you say he tends to shoot the ball at a higher rate than most point guards? Like, where does he get most of his points from?
Absolutely. Most of his shots come at the rim, a lot of free throw line shots. He's very good at drawing fouls, which is why some of these games he throws up stinkers, but he gets away with it because, like I forget, I think it was the first game of the Big Ten tournament. He had 15 points on 3 for 13 shooting because he's so aggressive. He gets to the lane so often, and he's really good at these mid-range shots off a screen or mid-range off drop coverage. He can put up a floater. And as of recently, his 3 has really come around. In the past dozen or so games, he's been shooting over 40%. And that's really helped because now defenses have to respect that he can score on them in a bunch of different ways. But he's primarily a driver and a slasher.
You talked about Maryland's press. I know West Virginia used to be dubbed Press Virginia a few years ago for their press and how hectic it was for other teams. But with that, West Virginia fouled a lot. But conversely, West Virginia's getting, I think, close to 25% of their points per game at the free throw line. So is Maryland a team who tends to foul a lot, or are they able to kind of stay out of foul trouble and, in a sense, press without fouling? Or do they run into foul trouble often because of their press and how that brings an extra level of physicality to it?
They are very good at pressing without fouling. They do it a lot more than I thought they would. I thought it was this sort of gimmicky thing they were doing at the start of the season, but they've really figured out how to slow down just about everyone they play. The only guy who really struggles with fouling is Reese. I don't know his number, but he averaged like 3.5 fouls a game over the season. There was this stretch where in like 6 games in a row during Big Ten play, he was averaging like 4.5. He's very, as I said, he's very smart defensively, but sometimes he gets caught. He plays against a lot of big guys in the Big Ten, and sometimes that means he's got to hack a little bit. In the tournament, Maryland's backup center also struggled with foul trouble, so that might be a little storyline. But most of our guards and wings are pretty good at playing smart defense and staying out of the way.
West Virginia, they've played small recently. They've kind of gone and found a way to have an effective smaller lineup. They've had 6'7" Trey Mitchell at the 5. They've had 6'7" Emmett Matthews at the 5. Do you think that's something where West Virginia can find success, or does Maryland have enough length and enough athleticism with that length, especially at the 4 and 5 spot, to kind of be able to defend that, you think?
I think that sort of plays into what Maryland's looking for, because Julian Reese is 6'9", and he's definitely the biggest player. We have Dante Scott, who's 6'7", Hakeem Hart, 6'6". All 3 of those guys are very versatile defenders. And I think it plays to Reese is the anchor of the defense. I think it plays to his strength not to have a 7'4" guy in the lane. I think that all of these guys are very long. They can protect the rim, and they can stay on the perimeter. Reese did a very good job in one of the Penn State games. I think both the Penn State games, holding his own on the perimeter, getting a lot of blocks, getting a lot of stops.
So would you say for West Virginia, whose starting center is 6'10", 285, would you say they're more likely to win a battle down there with someone like him compared to going with a smaller, more flexible, athleticism-wise lineup?
Depends on how much movement your offense has. If you're just on the block posting up, I think you might be able to get Reese a few times, but he's really good at reading the floor. I think that if he's good at planting himself by the rim and staying with guys who are about his size.
So then I'll ask you this. When Reese is on the floor versus when he is off the floor, is there a big difference in how good this team is and how this team moves offensively and defensively?
Defensively, there's not really that much of a difference. Our backup, his name is Emilian. He's even smaller than Reese. He's like 6'6", 6'7", but he's even smarter defensively. I think he's like one of the most clever players on the team. But he doesn't shoot very much. He only averages like 4 points a game, but I think he averages free throws on over 90% of the shots he takes. He only takes shots when he knows he's going to get fouled. Reese is more of like a feed the big guy type of thing. He's not a shooter. He's a complete non-shooter. But if you get him the ball by the basket, he converts over 60% of his shots. So I think you lose a little bit of offense without him, but Emilian is very good at moving the ball.
Moving on to more Maryland stuff, what would you say has been Maryland's biggest strength this season?
Their defense. I have to say their defense, because you're probably gonna ask about weaknesses. I'm gonna get to that, but they do not have a very thick bench. But the fact that everyone who gets minutes because they can defend and they can play as a team.
Right.
It's so important. They have a multidimensional defense that they play great as a team. They play great one-on-one. And as you said, they know how to go into the zone. They know how to start a long press and slow down possessions. And then as soon as they make the slowest possible defensive possession, they run in transition. They get defenses on their heels. And
then, as you called it, Maryland's biggest weakness, what would you say they've struggled with at times this season?
Some of their offense, when their defense puts them in positions to succeed. Dante Scott has had his moments, but boy, in the Big Ten game where Maryland blew a 15-point lead in the final game of the regular season, Hakeem Hart and Dante Scott combined for 4 points, and Jahmir Young had 26. It was really tough to watch, but sometimes you need some guys to create besides Jahmir Young, and our bench doesn't really offer a lot of that. We play one, sometimes two guards off the bench and one forward, and none of them are creators, or at least efficient creators. There's a lot of reliance on the very few guys who can. So sometimes we stall out.
And then last bit from here for me, couple stats here. Maryland 31st in the net, 3-10 in quad one games, but they are 16-1 at home at Xfinity Center, 2-9 on the road, and 3-2 on a neutral court. So the road struggles have been evident for West Virginia this season as well. But what would you say has kind of plagued Maryland on the road, and what's the difference between when they're playing at home versus on the road besides the obvious crowd difference?
Sometimes it's really just no one besides Jahmir Young shows up to some of these moments. Like he gets in trouble sometimes because he's not a huge guy, and he might really struggle to get the ball through the hoop sometimes because of big teams might pack the paint against him. But that's when we need other guys to step up. Sometimes the issue is Hakeem Hart has really struggled on the road, and I think he's our second, maybe third best player. But we really need other guys to show up. If we just ask one guy to beat a whole team, we're not going to succeed, and we haven't.
And last but not least, biggest key for you for the Terps if they want to win in advance to probably face number 1 overall seed Alabama on Saturday.
Yeah, as I said, I just need more people to score. I need more people to do something besides Jahmir Young is going to give you what he's going to give you, and so is Julian Reese. Julian Reese is safe to give you 12 points, really good efficiency. He's going to miss most of his free throws. But everyone else, Hakeem Hart and Dante Scott, I'm especially looking at because I need them, and Don Carey, our 5th starter. I need the tertiary guys, the wings. I need them to really contribute, be efficient, and stay out of foul trouble.
Well, I appreciate you joining. Everyone, go give Henry a follow on Twitter at HenryJBrown2. That is HenryJBrown, and then the number 2. Once again, Henry Brown, WMUC Sports at the University of Maryland, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much.